Hi everyone, this is Enid here. Thanks for having a look. In this video, I'm going to talk about some myths that I have seen all over the place online in looking in lots of discussion threads and forums regarding MBTI typology. The reason for making this video and the reason for the motivation behind making a lot of the other ones too is, one, I just enjoy this subject so much. I'm so deep in it all the time, and I've driven all of my face-to-face friends crazy with it. So I need some new people to talk to about it. But kidding aside, also I feel that because I've been so interested in this for the better part of 20 years, and I've done a lot more research than most lay people have on it, which is not to say, bully for me, because I've been definitely bested by a whole lot of people in terms of knowledge level and public speaking ability too, out here on YouTube. But nonetheless, though, I have done a lot of amateur but very accurate typing of people at their invitation over the years. We're talking tens and tens of people. I haven't actually kept track, but we're talking a good 60 people for sure. That indicates I've got a real knack for this. And when I see all these people talking about their own types and really scratching their heads about which one is really the one that they identify with the most, I see a lot of consternation and confusion, and that must be hard on those people, some of them, and frustrating at the very least that they can't sort it out. So if there's some of my experience that can help them do that, that would give me a real bang. I'd feel great about that. So here goes. One of the things I see people mention quite often is that their type has changed over their lifetime. I've even seen people say that they've changed type 5 times in a period of 10 years. I would say that's a really big myth. That is, I'm not saying that you wouldn't have. I mean, of course, you very well could have had, even taken the official inventory, Myers-Briggs inventory. You could have had it administered to you correctly and officially, and have come out with different scores that indicate your alignment, your sort of cognitive alignment with different kinds of types. But I am very, very skeptical of the idea that you have actually changed type multiple times over your life. I find it totally plausible, and I've seen proof of it with my own eyes empirically that, over the last 2 decades, that some people really are on the midline of 1 or 2 of the preference scales in the MBTI. I have seen that for sure, and I know that happens. And I can believe that people who were very, very close or were on the midline may have drifted a little bit over many years, probably could have drifted a little to one or the other. But the reason I'm so skeptical of this is because each type is a composite. Each type is a nexus of somewhat complex, interactive factors in cognitive functioning that creates a unique whole. And if you go and learn about the Jungian typology that the MBTI system was based upon and completely informed by, you learn about those functions, and then you learn about the hierarchy per personality type, what the theory is on that, of what are the top 4 and what are their orders of those 4 cognitive functions, and what are the orientations of those cognitive functions, and then what are the interplay between those cognitive functions in a given personality type. Then you will see how it is completely impossible, actually, to be an INFP on a Tuesday, but then you're an INFJ on a Thursday, or you're an INTP-ish INFP, or, I hear things like that. Now, I'm not trying to shut the discussion down or go, to people. One of the things that's so wonderful about the MBTI, I think, is that it gives, if nothing else, it gives us a terrific framework within which we can pose a lot of interesting questions about human motivation and about mentality and about proclivities and about likes and dislikes and about penchants for this and that kind of behavior sometimes. Again, that's kind of an extenuation, and that's to be done with, with caution, but if you're being serious. But yeah, so I mean, it does that. So I don't want to shut people up about that. It's just that I'm saying if you're really trying to type yourself and you're having a really hard time and you really want to get it right, you really do want to find the true type, then it would do you a lot of good to find out about the cognitive functions, and because then you're going to know why it is. Again, this one keeps coming up for me because I've been studying a lot about INFPs and INFJs lately, and I have many loved ones who are INFPs and INFJs. So I'm very, very naturally interested in people of those types, and I'm really. Whenever when I see how much confusion there is out there between these two types, one thing, it seems to be very common that someone who's an INFP went through a phase of thinking they were an INFJ, and vice versa. And when I think of all the theory I've learned about it, and also when I think about all the INFJs and INFPs I've dealt with face to face and in intimate relationships too, over years and years and years, I can't even imagine how that, and again, I don't mean to insult anybody, but just that when you've been around a lot of them and you know a lot of them well, and it's hard to imagine how two types that are so different, so profoundly different in their thinking and in their priorities, usually, cognitively speaking, the way they go about arriving at conclusions, all of this stuff. They have so much less to do with one another than they do with other types, with fewer letters in common in their MBTI type anagram. Anyway, sorry, blurb about that. I digressed. So type does not usually change over time. If it did, what that would mean is that everything else in the nexus of the type would completely change. So 1 year, when you were 14, you were leading with the introverted thinking function and were consistently one of the most, ruthlessly logical people naturally in any crowd of random assortment of folks. And then if you changed type and became an ENFP later, I notice no one wants to become an ENFP, by the way. Anyhow, that's another story. But let's say, and then at age 24, you were actually an ENTP or whatever. It's like, wait a minute. It just would mean you turned into a completely different person. That's what that would mean if that were true. So that's why I'm skeptical. Okay, number 2. A lot of people don't seem to. Here's another thing about the MBTI. I'll preface this one. A lot of people. A thing with this model is that the Myers-Briggs model is that you really have to know a lot about it to know anything useful and that can be applied correctly about it. That's another thing. So to keep in mind. So one thing that I see constantly as a huge, huge, huge source of confusion for I don't even know how many people. Almost everybody, when they are first learning about the MBTI system, has this confusion. The names assigned the scale ends for the 4 scales. So that would be EI for extroverted, introverted, NS for intuitive sensing, TF for thinking, feeling, and PJ for perceiving, judging. It's extremely important to know that the meanings for those 8 terms within this model have almost nothing to do at all with the colloquial meanings for those words. So, for example, if you have tested, your results are such that it would indicate that you are a quote J, a judger, a type with the J in the anagram at the bottom, and you think that, and you feel horrified because you think to yourself, I'm not a judgmental person. I'm a very open-minded person. Everybody says so, and I pride myself on that, etc. Just to take an example. You know what? Relax about that, because that is not at all what judging means. Not at all. And there are plenty of other videos you can look at to find out, and other great sources online to find out more what they really do mean. But oh boy, this has got to be a huge, huge contributor to so much mistyping going on. And a really basic one, and a really easily correctable one, if you can say. So I hope that can help some people. I'll say too, for introverted, extroverted, the introverted and extroverted scale, versus extroverted spectrum. What that scale has to do, it has many, many implications, and you can go way, 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 way into it. But for the sake of brevity right now, I'll say that a really key thing that scale is trying to tease out about a person's cognitive preferences is how do you regenerate your own energy? That is the main, if there's one thing to understand about that scale, I think that's the one. Does social interaction, be it through face-to-face talking with people, or email writing, or talking on the phone, or whatever, interaction with others, does it drain energy from you, which eventually will be physically felt, or does it tend to give you energy? Does it tend to give you energy to have that kind of interaction? That's the primary thing that scale's about. It has nothing to do with, can you tell a joke or not? Are you fun at parties? Are you a popular person in your social group? Do you like public speaking? Do you hate it? Etc. It has nothing to do with are you shy or not? It's perfectly possible to be extremely introverted and not a bit shy. So it might help you to take care of some confusion if you look into the model in more depth. So that's a big recommendation, is before you draw any conclusions, go way in there, because if you don't go way in there, you're liable to have a lot of misconceptions, which are going to make it very difficult for you to use this thing in the way that you want. All right, number 3. Having even a slight preference on any of those 4 scales in the MBTI is significant. So, in other words, if people can ever obtain any kind of scores that have anything to do with the official MBTI, Myers-Briggs inventory, I should say, or an unofficial test that is borrowing from it heavily and is pretty good, pretty helpful for a lot of people as an assessment online. If, let's say, you have you've just got a little teeny tail along the linear scale, you've got a teeny tail of a preference, that does not mean that, I flip-flop all the time. I'm really an INF/TJ. No, you're not. You're really not. Because here's the other thing to know. It's an embedded assumption with the Myers-Briggs system that every normally functioning adult that is not, being spoon-fed in institutional care and unable to move all day long, i.e. having all their basic needs being met by others, any pretty well-functioning, developed adult is using all points along the spectrum of all 4 scales probably hundreds of times a day. So there's no such thing. And if you weren't, just think about it. If you weren't doing that, let's say you're like, I just only make logical decisions that are pure logic, and I never ever consider subjective considerations. I never consider my own feelings or the feelings of others near me, or the impact on the morale of the larger group, or what is ethically sound as far as I'm concerned according to my value system. Imagine if that were even possible. Just try and imagine that that's even possible. It's not. It's not possible at all. So just relax about that. What they're trying to do in doing the assessment for the MBTI is tease out what your preferences are, i.e., what you do 51 times out of 100 in the same situation. Okay, seriously. That's what you should be. If you're like, I don't know, I'm using this, and sometimes I'm extroverted, sometimes I'm introverted, sometimes I'm really easygoing and don't want to make a plan for the day. Other times I'm really anal. Look, what they're trying to do, ask yourself the question: what would I do in such and such an significant telling situation? What would I probably do 51 times out of 100, what would probably feel most like me to do? That's one. I'll do another video too on tips on how to type yourself properly if you're going to do that. But that's what the model's trying to do. It's trying to see what your temperamental, and behind that is, your cognition. What are your habits of mind as regards working things out and then putting things into, and then of course the extension is putting things into action. But what the model's really trying to do is find out what your temperamental preferences are. It's not about aptitude. It's not about, and it's not about what you're actually doing. It's more about what do you tend to feel more comfortable naturally attending to mentally, and how. That's what they're trying to find out. Okay, so if you're someone who on one of the scales you've tested and you're just a little bit of a, it looks like a little bit of an extrovert, or you're a little bit over on the other side for J, say, that does not mean that you're J/P. Again, for what I said earlier about how impossible that often is. Theoretically, it's just totally impossible, but also because even a slight preference is significant. I'll speak of my own thing. I was given the official inventory. It was administered to me, the full-on, questionnaire, and my test results were huge. If you can't tell, you who really know about this model, I'm sure you can guess already. Huge E, or not huge E, but very far along the scale. I'd say at least 3/4 of the way, if I remember correctly. The N preference for me was almost off the chart. It was almost at the very end. The P was moderate, which again, those of you who've seen my bookshelf and seen my house after I haven't had company in a while, might surprise you, but moderate P. And then my F preference was very small. It was quite stubby, actually. But am I in any way an EN? Does that mean I'm an ENTP? Hey, NTPs, am I? No. I think any of the NTs could, especially who know about this model, could really attest. I absolutely am not. It may mean that I spend more time, in my hundreds of uses of things associated with that decision-making scale per day. It might mean that as that's what the counselor told me who administered the inventory to me, it might mean that I do make more use, more often, more reliably of what would be called the logical considerations in making my decisions than a lot of people with the F preference. But I'm an NF through and through, though. I mean, there's just anyone who spends 10 minutes with me and knows about the MBTI is going to know that real fast. It's going to come out. So there. Now, what else is there? Sorry, I'm all really going on. All right. Another one I hear about is people saying that their type depends on their mood. And again, I would challenge that. I think one's mood can definitely skew one's results when they're taking the MBTI. Particularly if they're doing a non-official short form one that's those ones can be really shaky in terms of how accurate the results are. Definitely your mood at the time of taking the inventory could influence things. But when I hear people say things like, well, I'm in an INTP mood today, but then, last on the weekend I was having a riot and I was really an ESFP. And it's oh my God, you guys. Again, if you want to talk about these things, I don't want to be censorious and yucky, and imposing and gross to people and disrespectful to people. People should do what, I think they should do what they want, and they should, if they want to talk like that, okay. I'm just saying that, according to the theory though, I just want you to be aware if this is getting in the way of you achieving what you would like to achieve with reference to the MBTI, it might be really helpful to you to know that mood should not have to do with what your results are. So that's something to try and manage when the assessment is being done. So there you go. Those are the big ones. There are others, but I think that's enough for today. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope you will again. Goodbye.